Welcome to Sib Spot. Today's Reddit stories are from PettyRevenge. Story 1 is by Molly May 666. Scared my old bully at ScreamFest. So it's not great, but it felt pretty satisfying at the time. In my old high school, I was called a psycho and was known as the psychotic crazy B-word. There were a group of boys that would torment me for everything. It made my high school life feel like heck. In September, I started college and largely forgot about the boys that tormented me. I do a performing arts course and we had to get some work experience in this area. I went through all the workshops at ScreamFest and ended up working there for Halloween. It was an incredible experience and I will be working there again this year. Anyway, I've been working there for around 3 weeks and on this particular day, I was at an attraction called Creed Farm. Part of this attraction was a maze with scarecrows where people dressed up, covered in straw so people wouldn't suspect them. I was a blood-covered cannibal. Due to the fake cuts and blood, you couldn't really tell it was me. I was around 3 hours in and one of the boys that tormented me from high school was walking through my attraction with his friends. I instantly recognized him and I was the person that would be scaring that group. I scared the life out of him, like I was meant to, but that's not the satisfying bit. I called out his name. He didn't recognize me and started stuttering and asking his friends if I overheard them call him, so I'd know his name. I then shouted out his last name, which got a very frightened reaction. Him and all his friends were very creeped out, but then they recognized me and said, "Oh, hi, Molly," my name. He then proceeded to tell his friends that we went to high school together and he was talking about how psychotic I am and how I'm crazy. So I started laughing crazily as my character and started singing, "You'd miss the psycho. The psychos are after you." I then chased him, still in my character, so I wasn't breaking any rules. I hadn't broken out of character all through this interaction. And I chased him all through the maze. He started screaming like a little girl and his mates were all laughing at him, saying how much of a P-word he is. I chased him out of the maze and he never came back in. Haven't heard from him since. Edit, I am 16 female and he's 17 male. Our next story today is by Dawn Shakar. Professor is impossible. We block him from controlling the curriculum. This is more retribution than revenge, but it's still... When I was studying for an MA in psychology, we had to take one of 2 courses. Advanced statistics, conventional statistics, boring as boring can be, or a course in any kind of alternate analysis. The second course was given by a professor who had developed a brilliant method for tabulating variables and defining predicted relationships between them, and I chose his course. Wrong move. While the guy was brilliant, he was also megalomaniac and nasty. He spent most of the lectures bad-mouthing conventional statistics and rarely taught anything. His teaching assistant wasn't very good at answering questions, and writing papers for the course was a nightmare. One of the things the professor was hung up on was language. He had invented terms for the elements of his theory. Some of them were invented words, some of them were common words that he gave new meanings, and insisted on using them. And woe betide any student who tried to use his or her own words to explain the concepts. During one lecture, he spouted a sentence full of his terms, common words but with his meanings, and most of the class didn't understand what on earth he meant. Incidentally, I was one of the few who did understand. A student raised his hand, said he didn't understand, and asked the lecturer to repeat it. The professor repeated what he had said word for word. The student said he still didn't understand. The professor barked out, "Do you know what X means? Do you know what Y means?" etc. X and Y being the words he used. The student said, "I understand each word, but I still don't understand the sentence. Could you explain it in other words?" The professor exploded. "These are scientific terms. There are no other words." I raised my hand, he called me his mistake, and I said, "Excuse me, but this course is required for MA students of psychology and sociology. The students here are MA students of psychology and sociology. If most of us don't understand, there must be another way to explain it." The professor turned dark purple. I thought he was having a heart attack, but he went back to the blackboard, drew a sketch, and explained, and everyone understood. By the end of the year, I failed the course. Not that I didn't understand, but I insisted on using my own words, and that was unacceptable. Next year, I took the conventional statistics course. After that year when I failed, I went to the head of the psychology department and reported. I said that it was unacceptable that a required course was one that was given so badly and graded so unfairly. He asked me to interview other students about the course and write him a report. It could be anonymous. Some students were afraid to express their concerns. He was very powerful at the university. But I got a long list of complaints and wrote a detailed report. Problems with the course, problems with the TA, problems with the assignments, and I signed it and handed it in. 2 other students were braver than me. They wrote an open letter. If you want to be insulted all year, if you want to hear one gospel from a teacher and one from the TA, etc., etc., this course is for you. And they signed it and hung it up on the bulletin board. Other students added their signatures and endorsements. Well, the course wasn't removed. But I found out that the professor had insisted on his course being made compulsory for all psychology students, and with his clout at the university, he would have succeeded. However, due to our protests, his demand was blocked. At least half a win. By the way, his method was brilliant. I used it countless times over my years working in research support, and even consulted with him. He either didn't know or didn't remember that I had ever snitched on him. This concludes the story, but there is an interesting edit at the bottom. Okay, since several of you have asked, and since the guy died years ago, here's the details. His name was Louis Gutman. The theory is called facet theory. Here's an article about it by one of his main colleagues, and he included a link to this guy's research. If you guys are interested in actually reading it yourself, you'd have to go to Google and type Reddit professor is impossible, we block him from controlling the curriculum, and then you would have to read this and click on the link. I'm not going to delve into it that deeply because it already sounds like it's over my head. I can almost safely say that statistics was my least favorite course in school. But there was one that was worse than that, and that was cultural anthropology, which could have been a truly great course, except that our professor didn't know what he was doing. And I still remember for our cultural anthropology class, he gave us a project where we had to research our own lineage and history. And I just made a presentation with a bunch of BS names and BS titles and BS professions, and he gave me 100 on it. I sometimes do wonder about my own lineage, so maybe doing that would have been a good thing when I was in college. If I want to know that now badly enough, though, I think I can just go back and do the research. I don't have to be in college to do it, and I don't have to have it mandated by a professor. But yeah, I aced that course. I was one of the students that was doing really well in that course. I'm not saying I'm a regular liar, but I definitely lied for that college project. Our next story today is by Beloved Illusion. Sister insults me, later pays the price. This happened about 10 years ago. I was at home and my cat was being a little crazy, as cats do. My sister saw my cat stretching on the carpet and made a snarky comment to my mom, who I was living with at the time, that I should get rid of that, quote, stupid bee of a cat and get her put down, quote, and started laughing. I, of course, react not so nicely, and she asked me why I'm being a C-word. My sister is a chronic poo stirrer, so she made me upset, and I left for an event I had to go to. A few hours later, I get a call, and I answer. It was a police officer. I thought the worst and asked what was going on. It turned out my dad was at a bar, and I guess he got a little too tipsy. They said he was lying down next to the building and pooped himself. I, of course, am pretty close to said bar, but my sister was too. I told the police officer on the phone that I was at an event and not available and to call my sister. I gave him my sister's number and put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I checked my phone an hour later and had 5 missed calls, as well as a bunch of texts from her saying that she got a call from the officer and that Dad needed to be picked up immediately before they took him to the police station. It turns out she went to pick him up, and his pants were worse than the officer said. She had to clean him up quite a bit before taking him back home. I had voicemails cussing me out and about how she had to pick him up and clean him. I called her back later and asked how it went. She was angry and asked why I couldn't do it. I tell her, sorry, I was too busy putting my stupid B word of a cat down, and hang up. No, my cat was not put down. She for sure got the message not to mess with me again. Edit to add. The carpet was a piece of carpet that was cut and left over from the house being built. My mom was okay with the cat scratching on that piece of carpet. Edit 2. Mom and Dad are divorced. That's why I got called instead. I've said similar before, but there are cat people and there are dog people. There's a lot of people who aren't cat people and they hate cats or they don't like pets at all. They may not like cats or dogs. And it's surprising to me, like you think you know somebody and then you hear that they had a cat for like 3 years and they just decided to get rid of it one day because it made a mess that they didn't want to deal with. Some people see pets as family and some don't. They see them as utility. They're only useful to them as long as they're entertained or enjoy their presence all the time. And any time that it becomes any bit of work for them, they get rid of them like they're nothing. And as a pet owner and lover, that is mind-boggling to me. They deserve lots of love. On a lighter note, there was a bit of a cute exchange down in the comments that I wanted to share. To start it off by pleading for sanity. My dad told me I should put my cat down because he was old. The cat outlived my dad by a couple of years. Underneath that by Century Eggs and Rice. Need an alibi or you good? Winky face. Underneath that by Reference Here 8383. I was there too. And underneath that by Bored Mama 7778. I was the Uber driver. Underneath that by somebody's name I'm going to struggle to pronounce. By Glob Gloga Gala Beast. I was the cat. Underneath that by Aussie Doc 58. I was the carpet. No, scratch that. No, actually, don't scratch that because that's how it all started. And finally, underneath that by Oleyas. This is also my favorite reply. And my axe. Way to bring Lord of the Rings into this. It made it even more epic than it already was. Our next story is by Frugal Voyager. Attempt gift swapping? Get humiliated. Today was my nephew's 13th birthday, and was the day I finally got back at my sister-in-law for her antics. Sister-in-law has had a habit of swapping name tags on the gifts with her cheap last-minute finds, since the gifts were open when the extended guests had left. She has been successful with a gift I sent over when I was out of town and couldn't attend my nephew's birthday a few years ago, and thought she might try to pull her usual trick. So I got my neighbor in on this. Gave him a box with bright yellow wrapping and asked him to brag about how he got so lucky in finding this super rare Star Wars Lego set, while sister-in-law stood near, knowing the gifts will be open later when he'd had left. As expected, sister-in-law decided to generously help set up the gifts and decorations. I caught her eyeing that box with yellow wrapping, and before long she accidentally knocked over a few, quickly swapping the tags. After the party, nephew eagerly tore into the presents. The look on sister-in-law's face made me wish we had some reality TV cameras set up for this. When nephew opened the box with the bright yellow wrapping with her name on it, out came a few packs of cigarettes and a box of contraceptives with a post-it note reading, "Happy birthday, you're a man now." Sister-in-law was speechless, and so were the rest of the family. She tried to play it off as a prank, and that she wanted nephew to be prepared for adulthood. She was red as a ripe tomato the rest of the night. You know, I hear stories like this about sister-in-laws that are just insane and terrible. This one's pretty bonkers, honestly. Like, I can't believe that people like this exist. But then I remember that I have a sister-in-law, and she likes to bring zip-locked cockroaches to hotels. And then when she gets into the hotel room and she's paid for it up front, she brings the cockroach downstairs and tells them that she found it in the room, and she demands a free room. Some people are just so scummy. And it's not just sister-in-laws that do that, but the gift swap story is featuring a sister-in-law, and so is my own story. You just want to snap your fingers and make these people behave like normal human beings, but it's not that simple, unfortunately. Our stories for today have come to a close. Until we meet again, have a beautiful day.